Hope you like this. If you do, give it a thumbs up and leave any comments below. And remember to subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date on all my hypnotic bedtime stories. So I hope you enjoy the story.
As you take a moment to close your eyes, you can listen to me tell this story in the background. And as you listen to this story, you can begin to drift comfortably asleep. And I don't know whether you'll drift comfortably asleep more with the sound of my voice or the spaces between my words. And as you drift comfortably asleep, you can listen to me tell this story. And so, with your eyes closed, listening to me tell this story, you can have a sense of walking through a savannah, and you're walking through the savannah, having a look around, noticing just a vast area of grassland and the warmth of the sun shining down on you, and the occasional tree, and noticing herds of animals in the distance, and perhaps seeing some lions all sitting together under a tree. And you can be taking your time to stop, get your camera out, zoom in, hold your breath as you take some beautiful photos of birds in the sky, of zebra, of different animals, as well as of the scenery and what you can notice around you. And while you walk, you notice that you're quite thirsty, so you drink some water, and you think that you see what looks a bit like a hedge, and you think it's an odd place for a hedge, so you think maybe you're just a bit too warm, maybe it's a little bit like a mirage. Maybe it's just something you're seeing as you walk around. But as you continue walking, you notice that it's getting closer, and that you're getting closer to it. You notice it definitely seems to have substance. It's not just a mirage. It just seems unusual to see this in a savannah. And so you continue walking, hearing the sounds of each footstep, feeling each footstep as it hits the dry ground, noticing the colour of the sky, the colours around you of the ground, of animals, continuing to walk towards that hedge, curious what might be behind it. And as you get closer, you become even more convinced that it's real. And once you reach it, you touch it just to make sure it's real. And it's a hedge that's higher than you are. So you can't see over that hedge, but you run your finger around it, touching the leaves, feeling with the fingertips that smoothness of the leaves, a kind of waxiness to those leaves. and you walk around the hedge. And notice an arch. It's a stone arch. And you notice that stonework heads behind the hedge. You don't know if someone lives here or why this is here. But there's a wooden door with a latch. And so you reach forward, pop the latch, and feel the weight of that wooden door as you hear it creak while it opens in your hand. And you walk through and close it behind you. And you find yourself in the most beautiful garden. So lush, with lush greens and life. A complete contrast to the dry savannah. And you start exploring the garden. You take photos of plants, of insects, of butterflies, of the birds. You explore the garden. You sit down on the grass, just taking in the atmosphere, the calmness. You sit under a tree in the garden where you feel shaded. And then you notice, while sitting, that in another tree there's a hole. And you wonder whether it's just a hole into the tree because the tree's a bit rotten. But you think, maybe you'll find some interesting insects in there to take photos of. So you head over to that tree. But when you poke your camera in to take photos, you realise it's actually a secret entrance. It's some kind of a secret passageway. So you crawl your way into that tree space and find some steps leading down under the tree. And you follow those steps down under the tree. And the deeper you go, the more you hear each footstep echo. And somehow there seems to be light down here, but you can't work out its source. It just seems to be well lit, like just being indoors on a sunny day. Somehow sunlight is being directed from somewhere into this tunnel. When you notice the brickwork of the tunnel, you feel the brickwork of the tunnel with your fingertips. You start taking footsteps and you hear the way your footsteps echo down the tunnel and then back again. And as you follow this tunnel, so the sounds from the garden begin to fade into the background. Until the only sounds you can hear are the sounds of your breathing and the sounds of each footstep you take. And then as you continue to walk in this tunnel, going deeper and deeper into the tunnel, you start to hear a faint sound of the movement of air, knowing that somewhere down here air is blowing into this tunnel, probably from another entrance or exit. And down the tunnel you find some stairs, and you walk down the 10 steps that spiral down lower, down the steps 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way down those steps. And you find yourself in a deeper tunnel, and yet you know the tunnel above you still goes on somewhere, but you're now following this tunnel, which is deeper. And this tunnel's also lit well, but now you can hear a distant sound of dripping water, and perhaps the slight sound of running water. And so you follow this tunnel deeper and deeper underground, curious about who built these, aware that they're man-made, curious about when they were built and for what purpose. And so you walk along the tunnel, and then you get to even more steps at the end of this tunnel. But rather than being spiral steps, these are just a gradual slope of steps leading down to a large open area. So you walk down those steps as your footsteps echo louder in the larger space. And you appear to be the only person down here, and this space is well lit. And what you notice is that there's a train line down here. You don't know where it goes, where it came from. It appears almost like you found a secret underground train station in the middle of a savannah, miles and miles from any civilization. And on the surface you can see no logical reason why someone would place a train station here, why they would hide the entrance to it in the base of a tree, why they would build a garden over it. And so you explore. You don't know whether anything ever uses this, whether a train ever runs along this track. But you decide that you want to explore this space. See if you can find any clues. Because it looks like it's old, like it's been here a while, but it looks like it's well kept, like people are still here. And as you explore and walk around, trying to find any clue you can, you hear a rumbling and a vibrating noise. And that rumbling and vibrating noise gets louder and louder, closer and closer. And you realise it sounds like an underground train hurtling along. So you hide behind some boxes and you watch this train hurtle into view before rapidly slowing down to a halt. And some people get off and you don't know what they're doing, and you decide, although you don't know how things will go or what this train does, that curiosity gets the better of you. You want to know, where does this train go? Why is this train here? Who built all this? What's its purpose? And so when no one's looking, you run and jump into the open doors, into a carriage on the train. And the carriage is empty. But just to make sure you're not seen, you just duck down rather than sitting in a chair. You duck down near the chairs. And then the doors close, and the train accelerates rapidly away and enters into tunnels that plunge it into darkness, with just the faintest lighting in the carriage. And you can notice as you look up and down the train that there's a carriage a few carriages down that has lighting, and so you suspect that they just use the lighting in the carriage that's operational, in the carriage that has people in it, and that although all the doors for all the carriages open, they probably just have the lighting on in the necessary carriage. And all that's in the other carriages is just a bit like emergency lighting, just a subtle lighting in case anyone needed to pass through the carriage for some reason. Then you decide this is good for you, because it allows you to remain hidden, and you don't know where this train's going to go. And the sound of it down the track vibrates and sounds loud and echoey in the tunnel. And after some time passing through the ground, the train rapidly halts and enters a station. And you peer up and have a look out, and you can see in the distance there's a few people milling around, looking like they're working on something. And you decide to be curious, to get off the train here. You don't know how frequently trains pass along here, but you decide if these people work here, they must have to come and go somehow and sometime. And you can't work out where you are in relation to where you set off from, because you don't know how far the train has travelled. But you know that for hundreds of miles from where you were, there was only Savannah. And then in one direction there was mountains, and in the other direction there were some towns and villages. And you know that you've head in the direction of the mountains, but you don't know if you've gone as far as the mountains, or maybe even further, or maybe the train curved on the track, you didn't feel it, but you've got no bearing to know for sure. But as you look around in this lit area, you notice that it looks like someone's just carved all of this out of a mountain. with its huge ceiling, buildings built in. And so you creep around and have a look around. And you try to be really quiet so you can listen, see if you can notice any speech. And you notice people speaking, holding normal everyday conversations. And you notice some computer terminals, but all they do is just talk about letting you log in. And then as you creep around, you get close enough to be able to read a terminal over someone's shoulder. And you try and stay hidden, peering all the way over their shoulder. And as you read their computer screen, you notice that you found your way into a secret government facility. And that it seems that they've discovered something here in this mountain or in this cave that's to do with an ancient piece of technology. And this ancient piece of technology seems to be really powerful and could be used as a weapon, and they're attempting to work it out. And so you creep around, you want to find this ancient technology, you want to take a look at it. And eventually, after much searching, you find a room that isn't shut off, because they obviously don't expect people to find this place or be snooping. And anyone who works here obviously has clearance. And you enter that room, and because they want to keep this secret, they don't have huge numbers of staff. And so you creep into that room and look around the room. And in the middle of the room, you see what looks like an ancient stone case with a stone lid. And there's ancient writing on it. It looks a bit like Egyptian hieroglyphs. And there's metal bits on each side that obviously poles used to be put through so that people could carry this thing. And you imagine in your mind as you look at it that they probably had poles put through each side, and then maybe 4 people in front, 4 people behind, lifting this up and carrying it on their shoulders. And the lid is also made of solid stone. And you know that there's no way on your own you'd be able to lift that lid. And over near the back wall, you find a book of notes that obviously a scientist or someone who works on this project has been taking of their observations. And there's written down an interpretation of the hieroglyphs, of what they mean. And they talk of this box containing something so powerful, containing something so important, something that, if opened, unless properly protected, will rapidly harm the person who opened the box. And you read that it says that this can be harnessed and can be used in conjunction with specific equipment, a specific setup that can focus the harmful energy. And that it's not specifically that it's supposed to be harmful. That just happens to be a byproduct of what it is. But that as a warning, there's the risk that someone could create this and focus the harmful energy, and that it needs to be locked away. And that this was created as a test. It was created to help people to have compassion, to help people to feel a sense of humanity, to help people to develop humbleness. By placing in front of people something with such immense power, that it teaches you to be able to turn your back on that power, to turn your back on seeking that power, being able to walk away from that power. And it talks about being so incredibly difficult to harness the power. So anyone that's ever tried in the past has come to an unfortunate end. And yet the fact that there is a possibility means the wrong people may keep trying. And it now seems, whoever these people are here, that they're trying to figure out a way of safely harnessing this power for their own end. And you continue reading this translation and reading that people will keep trying to harness the power. And that when people stop trying to harness the power and can let go of wanting to have the power, then humanity will be ready for its next stage. And it doesn't explain what that next stage is, just that humanity will be ready once people can stop harnessing power, once people can stop being obsessed with trying to have that power, and instead walk past something powerful. Without feeling tempted, and that it's offering up the greatest temptation as a way of shifting human consciousness for those who can walk away. And you feel that this can't be allowed to get into the hands of all these people, whatever use they plan on having, because the best case scenario is that it'll harm them. The worst case scenario is they succeed in harnessing it, and that maybe that's why they have that garden, for somewhere they'll check and test the power, because it's in the middle of nowhere, miles from any civilization. And so you don't know how you're going to deal with this, how you're going to make this disappear to them. And there's no way you can take whatever it is out of this box, because you can't even lift the stone lid. And even if you did take it out of the box, it probably wouldn't end well for you, even if you weren't trying to harness the power for yourself. And you remember that you heard running water. And that now you must be under mountains, so there's probably more running water that perhaps flows off the mountains. And you think somehow they got this into this room. And you notice that it's up on some kind of a device. And you manage to find something you can slide under it. And so although it's incredibly heavy, you just about manage to get it rolling, get it moving. And you sneak it out of the room. And you try and sneak it down towards the train line. It's incredibly heavy and hard work. And you know if they're working on it, it won't take them long to notice it's gone. But you have an idea. And you get it down to the train line. You then start pulling it on the rougher ground, aware that that's making some noise and just hoping people don't notice what you're doing, and hoping no train comes along here yet. And you follow an area of dampness that you saw, of some slight running water. And you get it down into a small cave. You manage to pull it to where a cave is, and drag it just off the train line into a small cave that's barely big enough for you and it to fit through. And you continue to pull it, moving it into this cave, knowing that at the moment if they search they'll probably still find it. And then you find a underwater river system where the water's flowing off the mountains, down through the mountain, before exiting the mountain, where it obviously flows off from the mountain And you hope that this container is going to displace enough water to just about float, despite its weight. Or at least float enough to make it light enough. And you stand in the water and you start pulling it, and you can feel the cold water around you. And you pull it down this underwater river, and there's no longer any light. So you get a torch out to light your way. Surrounded by the sound of rushing water, knowing that no one will hear you now. And this rushing water has carved out caves within this mountain. And you follow it deep within the natural caves. Following through those caves. Keeping track in your mind of when you turn left and right. And where you might be. Until you find a space that you think is suitable, where the water is making a waterfall, and so is hollowing out some space beneath that waterfall. And you drop the box and the cart-like thing you are hauling the box on down into that space beneath the waterfall, and you start covering it over, and you know there's a risk it might get found. But you hope that it'll stop them finding it for now, and you know they'll be angry when they find it's missing. But there'd be no way that they would know that you were ever there, or who you are. Because being a top secret base, there was no cameras that you spotted, because they wouldn't want any way of anyone releasing any footage of it. And so you find your way back out towards that railway track. You decide this time you're not going to go on the train. But you spend some time filling in the gap in the wall that you went through to find your way into that river system. Scraping loose ground up and filling it in. So unless they actively touched on the wall and pushed on it and examined it to find out that it's hollow behind it, they hopefully won't find that gap, won't then be able to follow that river system and find their way to that place that you've buried that thing.